Right, welcome everyone, and thank you for coming back again. Continue this discussion. We've done some work here in the last month in trying to narrow down some numbers a little more exact. I say exact, about as exact as you can be with a proposed system. But I just want to mention something. I know I saw some posts out on social media after our last meeting. I would just like to say, try to refrain from whatever you can with that. Only because this is a work in progress. Nothing, literally nothing has been decided yet. And it's very disconcerting to see people coming out in favor or against something that this group has spent a lot of time working on, and we're trying to get the best out of it. So I think everybody who's here is doing the right thing. I think that it's a discussion that's going to continue. I think that even if and when we can get to a full county-wide system, it's still going to be a work in progress. We're not going to flip a switch on day one and all the problems are going to go away. So I don't think that should be expected at all from anyone, whether that's us at the county level or in the providers or residents out in the county. This is going to be a work in progress. I do think that we have the right players involved with EMS providers, with ambulance administrators, with town supervisors, with county personnel. I think we have the right people involved to come up with a good solution. So I do appreciate all the time that everybody's spent so far, and I appreciate you coming back. We're going to kick this off, and Sean, get into a little bit of where we've been, I guess, on the financial side of this in the last month and what we've got.
All right, let me start. Just everybody on the agenda page for your inserts. In the proper tabs, everything from attendance sheets to minutes. But then I would leave out the graphs and a 3-page loose finance report. And I'm going to warn you in advance, we are going to be in the weeds tonight. We're going to have a deep dive into numbers. So if I start seeing glazed eyes, I'll take a break. We have gone into every town budget in detail. Pretty deeply. I mean, you may have missed number 2 pencils, but we believe we have gotten down to the point where we can identify what the system is today in totality. What you have is basically an $11,900,000 operation when you bash everybody together between all the towns and what they contribute from their levies, what the county contributes to it from its levy, and the receipts from invoicing from insurance companies or Medicaid, Medicare, et cetera. We've gotten, I think, that fine-tuned, but that is as the system is today, 11.9. Then when we throw on the estimated increases for personnel costs, if it went to a consolidated system, it would basically become a $15 million annual company, department, call it what you will. The increase there, that $4.1 million increase, being new money into the system above what is adopted today in respective budgets. There is, I think, a final missing piece that could have some budgetary impact. That's what I have under number 2D, is that we have not been able to do an asset evaluation. And I mean, really by that, I mean the rigs, the ambulances right now. What is their condition? What is their lifespan? We need to have 3 more rigs next year, or 5 more rigs, or no rigs. But each of the budgets had equipment purchases as line items in their departmental budgets anyway. So I think we would be able to absorb some overall equipment overhaul, if these numbers gets transferred into a complete budget. So I think we're down to short strokes. Is there gonna be some rounding up, roundings down? Absolutely. But I think this is probably the best spot that we can get in. And then number three, what we can't estimate at this point is, would there be an efficiency on invoicing? With a centralized system, would we have more revenue coming in from insurance companies, et cetera? And conversely, would there be any efficiencies or scaling by having single procurement and those types of mass purchases rather than being done across 8 communities plus? Would we have some savings on an annual basis by that type of an efficiency? Almost impossible to be able to project at this point. It may take a year or two really to come up with those numbers. I want to thank Ray Ward, Real Property Services, and Evan Corbs in my office. They're the ones who got into the lead here. They got deep. They got muddy. So it's going to be most likely impossible to read these pages on the screen. So you can break out your spreadsheets, if you will, and part of the complication or the complexity of this number crunching, and this is going to be very technical, so forgive me. It's when you convert from 14 towns into a single county entity, and then take into consideration the apportionment that the county does. But we apply, my total levy gets applied across 14 towns. And that can all be different depending upon equalization rates, et cetera. So it gets a little complicated. But it's an exercise that we go through every year now anyway, when we adopt the county budget. $27 million gets divided across 14 towns. And everything is different because everybody's equalization rate and assessed valuation is different. And that's going to be a complication. It's going to be hard to explain or hard to understand when you actually see what the converted numbers mean to any respective town. It may not make sense to you because a dollar going up on the county budget does not necessarily represent a dollar going down on a town budget. That's going to be confusing, but that's just how apportionment works. And it may drive some of the confusion that we're going to have here about talking about how to, if we're going to have a consolidated system, and that's one option. But if most of these numbers here are going to be on a consolidated system, how then to handle not only the addition of the new expense to that existing budget, but then how do we handle the amounts of money that are existing raised across 14 towns? How is that going to be adjusted? I'm going to make some assumptions here that it's going to be a dollar for dollar trade, if you will. My budget goes up 1, your budget goes down 1, but the impact, again, the impact may not be dollar for dollar because of the assessment differences across the board. Ray or Kevin, do you have any comments you want to make on that before I go further?
Oh, really?
And screaming out loud does not count.
They didn't bring the glasses.
So if you go to your big page here, the folded page, and this is where we got down to the real brass tacks in terms of what is each town, and part of the confusion here may also be that one town may classify it in expenses miscellaneous and somebody else classified it as building repair or car repair. So it's a little bit difficult because 14 towns, everyone might have a different chart of accounts. And but we did the best we could, and then we summarized things as best we could by function. And that's where you see on the far right side, you can see that 10,904,000. That's where we are today. That's at 6/14/39. We think the system is as today. And then when you come on down, excuse me, about 3/4 of the page down, you see a rounded number of 15 million. And in essence, we've taken your existing expenses today, and the only thing we've done at this point is increase wages and increase the number of personnel. And then we also had to accommodate fund balance contributions that each town budget has, because in theory, that fund balance contribution would go away if it's not gonna be raised on your town budget. But it just had another impact overall that we had to address. So then we start looking at I'm gonna jump around. If you go to the 3-pager, it's not a graph, it's just a simplistic Excel outline. 3 pages that says EMS property tax evaluation at top. Everybody there? All right, so I'm gonna go through it, not necessarily options, but just different calculations as to how a consolidated system would be impacted financially across the board. So the first number, 27 million, that's the existing county levy. That's how much the county raises in taxes. And we raise that against all 14 towns. If you break down the budget impacts, the next number of $9 million would be the amount of the transfer amount of net expenses back to the county, if the county was gonna take this all on. Now my levy goes to 36.5. The next is a simple percentage. What if my budget go up? In theory, my budget would go up 34% as a percentage.
34% is 0.34.
Thank you. But then if you take the corresponding number that is currently raised by the towns, since I'm substituting that number, then you're gonna reduce $5 million from the overall impact, bringing the overall impact to the county budget to 15%. That presumes a full dollar for dollar reduction in town budgets, town levies, and again, does not provide any gains that may be attained by virtue of increasing the invoicing system or decreasing the cost based upon a consolidated system and the efficiencies of scale. So then I sat back in my chair after I had a heart attack and said, how can I adjust this? How can I lessen the impact at any given year? So we all know what the tax cap is. Everybody has a limitation right now that you can't go above 2% without an override on your budget from your respective boards. So 2% of 27 million is 540,000. I rounded down to 500. If the county wanted to maintain a no more than a 2% tax levy per year, well, I put in 500 in new taxation, but then I gotta come up with a corresponding $4 million to make up the difference of that total increase that is coming onto my budget. I do that every year so that I don't have to override the tax cap. But after 10 years, the county would have had to contribute $24 million of additional monies into the system. I don't think that's doable either. That kind of a check.
Yeah,
Go.
just a slight question. With all the magic numbers that the state has, don't they have some kind of a thing we can override the tax cap
Sure.
for this without getting any kind of penalties or anything like that because it's a new system?
No. That was one of the bills that the state legislature did not pass with its budget adoption.
I was gonna say, I thought it was in there.
It was,
Letitia got hurt.
okay, we're not going there. Yes, one of the bills would have allowed the tax increase to be above the 2% without the need for the legislative override. But those, I think there was 5 bills in total that had to deal with varying improvements to the EMS system. None of them came out of chambers. They all didn't get addressed in the budget. I think primarily because the oxygen in the room being breathed by 3 people, I'm sorry, did I say that? Got focused on discovery and bailing out MTA. Everything else was was secondary, and the state legislature did not get to it. Now, they have 32 days left in their session. I believe June, whether or not they readdress it and adopt it outside, that could be a possibility. But the big issue that I was hoping for is it doesn't reduce taxation, but it would have allowed the formation of a countywide special district. So that every citizen on their tax bill could have clearly seen one effort, EMS services on one line, and they could understand that rather than it being in 20 places. But that didn't happen. All right. So then I started doing some other computations. So page 2, option 3. And this is not a complete, this is just, these are number crunching. I'm a digit guy, so this just means that if the county only picked up your share, we kept the system basically as it is. And then I thought, well, we're gonna receive receipts from short-term rental. That just started March 1st. We've never had a sales tax on STR activity before. But you can see a simple equation there that, and this is a total guess. But the STR industry says that Greene County has a high level of rentals. It's a static number. Right now it's about 1,400 units. So I took a guess at what the occupancy rate would be and what the night per rental would be. And basically I came up with an estimate that we might receive $1.5 million of new money in 26 that we don't have today. So I said, okay, dedicated to this impact. And as you can see, it doesn't really change things all that much. You're not $1 million, and I rounded down to $1.25 million. So it doesn't really have that much of an impact because of the size of what we're talking about here. Then I did it again in number 4, and I said, okay, the county picks up everything. Town levies and expanded payroll and a reduction from STRs to get the total impact. And it doesn't really change, 34% goes to 29%. Again, not an earth-shattering change, not an earth-shattering reduction, but a reduction nonetheless. And again, it presumes that your county budget or your town budget are going to be offset by that number. Then, looking at the dollar values that are currently raised in the towns, and my interpretation that some towns are just saying they can't continue to afford this level of appropriation levels in their budget. So do we copy what happened? I don't know how long ago did we do college chargeback transfer? 10 years, 8 years? If you college supervisors who were around then, the college chargeback was for your residents who went to community college, you got a back bill at the end. The county took that off of your budget. And we did so over 5 years by taking 20% of that value down a year to the point where now the county spends about anywhere from $750,000 to $800,000 a year for that college chargeback that you used to have in your budget. So if we use the same concept of slowly backing the towns down, I just started again with 20%. And then you can see the overall impact there on under number 5. And again, it doesn't really change a whole lot. But now go to page 3. And hopefully, while those high percentages of impact might terrify you, what is the actual impact? And again, I'm going to pick on the single family home across the county, and that varies by 14 towns. But we will have in the other sheets, we actually did it by town, and it comes up with some very unusual circumstances. But the first line here, currently, what does the average home pay for the combined EMS ambulatory transportation system. That includes the fly cars, that includes all the towns, all the rigs. The current service level for one house, $227 a year. Next line, you just add the increase in personnel. You're adding $125 to the system. So now the average house is at $350 per year, not per thousand, a total cost based upon the average value of a home. And again, I gotta preface, every town is different. Some towns have higher rates on average, some rates have lower, but this is a countywide average.
Sean,
Yes,
just to clarify. So that's on the total 330,000 or 40,000.
no, that's the total.
That's the whole bill.
That's the total bill per year, not per thousand. And then just to kind of double check my math, I did it a different way. Taking the levy drop, and the county increase, and I get, I'm $2 off. So I guess that was a way for me to test my methodology to see if that was fairly consistent, and I'm fairly confident that that is gonna be the overall impact. So the difference of $125 a year is the total impact for an average house. And there's gonna be 14 different answers to this equation, which you're gonna see later on. And that's Ray's magic. Ray has taken this down every level. And it's a very interesting computation when you look at it because of the varying levels of assessment, but also how the apportionment works. We basically revert, we take everything, assessed value, we bring it to full value, which in theory makes everybody equal in terms of the full assessment practices. But the computation, it seems confusing. I looked at it 4 or 5 times, there's gotta be a mistake here. There's gotta be a formula error here, but there's not. It's just the uniqueness of applying a countywide levy across 14 different towns that have different assessed valuations, have different composition of residential, commercial, industrial, farm, you name it, and how that converts. And this is probably as close as we can get, I think, today to get what would be a fairly accurate impact if the system combines and you go out of business and the county goes into business. Or some entity, if you want to even be that general, takes over the whole shebang. And that wouldn't, now you could also have a question of, I could also run numbers on, well, how would the consolidation work? Would it start at the stroke of midnight? Or would we do 1 town a month? So the numbers can swing either way, but at the end of the day, you're gonna get back to the same impact. And, a 34% tax increase sounds stupid, but it's $125. So, be careful with your numbers. I don't know if anyone's got a question on that at this point. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that just for payroll or is that everything?
That's the whole enchilada. That's the operating expense, that's payroll, that's healthcare, that's retirement, that's new tires on the rig. Again, we believe that we have gone down to fine detail to every town budget to be able to determine that the existing programs, all in combined with all entities, is that 10-9 figure on a per annum basis. John?
Generally, when we figure budgets and things like that, and cost per household, we figure it on a per thousand valuation.
Yeah,
And you get a much more smaller number that looks better.
we've done that, but we've done it 14 times.
Exactly.
Because every town is gonna be so different.
There's a chart.
Yeah, there is,
You get into the chart.
there is a chart here, so I guess, let me go there, and I'm gonna have Ray help me here. I'm gonna volunteer Ray. So Ray, why don't you go through your chart, now go to start with number one, they're all labeled at the top.
You need glasses?
No. Just took my contact. I can't read the fine print. So if we're gonna go through them 1 through 9. And I'm just gonna give you a broad overstroke and then let Sean pop in and answer any questions. So the first chart, current EMS tax funding, which is totaling right now 7,442,000. And all this information is just charted from the statistics that you see here. There's nothing, I didn't pull anything under the hood.
So the page that is folded, all of those numbers now crunch the graphs that you're about to review.
So as I told Sean and Kevin, I've tried to keep your colors consistent throughout the charting. So the blue is always going to be the Greene EMS portion of the levy. The orange money will either be, the Voya money, town EMS levy, or the county levy of the town levy. And the purple will always be the unexpended fund balance that we now have to consume within the county levy. So this is just a pure breakdown of the 14 towns and a total at the end, looking, and you can, just see what your town funding level is, what the county current Greene EMS is, and what the unexpended fund balance is. If you go flip over and go to chart 2, this is the actual funding where we've added the revenue piece to this. So currently the system is operating on 10,000,009. Again, broken down, we just added the revenue piece to this. So now we get to what we're saying is going to go from a roughly 11 million to a $15 million operation with the added personnel. Chart 3 is that same thing. We've now taken the current EMS tax funding, and again, we're looking at town EMS funding, not the county levying that town funding piece, and added that personnel increase. And so you start to see, now if you notice, all those last 2 charts are just calculated at 100%. I just wanted you guys to see what the varying levels, by color, and the numbers are all there that within the charts also, but by color, you can see the disparity of it, and how it would break down. The next 2 charts, and if you pull them apart and look at 4 and 4A together, 4 again is done at 100% level, but now we've taken the town levy and converted it to a county levy. And as you can see in chart 4, everybody is consistent at 100%. I just wanted you to see that, we're applying it equally across the board. But 4A is where we start to interject the taxable value of a town, its heat rate, converting everybody to a full value. In this county, it's a little over 10 billion in full value. It's last I looked. And so now you start to see where the funding source would come from, again, with the county picking up the town piece. You confuse me by printing these double slides. Straight line. Chart 5, so flip over. This is just the same information that you saw in 4A, but just all in one nice pretty color, that this would be the county and how it would break down across the 14 towns. You notice I didn't put a total at the end of that one. This is the levy of the 11.5 million, where the balance of the 15 million is the revenue coming in. Chart 6, and I'm only going to do this one once because it gets a little bit hairy. This is where we started. Sean mentioned in one of his options, I think it was 3, about the 20%. So here you see where if we take 20% of your town levy, and I'm just gonna pick on two towns here, Ashland. If we were to drop their town levy by $33,000 and redistribute that across the county levy, the tax levy for that town would only be 24,000. Move over 2 columns and go to Caro, and you can see it's the converse of that. We reduced their town levy by 44,000 in order for us to recoup that within the county and redistribute it. It becomes a 97,000. So pick your individual town, and as you can see at the far column to your right, it's an equal for each, $937,000. Chart 7. This is the one Sean was talking about. This is as if the town was still funding their EMS services. This is where we would be at today. And now we're looking at tax rates as opposed to levy. So we're gonna pay 21 cents. If we look at the very top row, it's 21 cents for the Greene EMS service. It'd be 50 cents average. If you were to average everybody's orange money, it comes out to 50 cents. 4 cents for if we were to average the unexpended fund balance across each town. And if you look at one of the first charts, we show you that only 4 or 5 towns have an unexpended fund balance that they apply directly to EMS services. And then 38 cents per thousand of full market value for the increase in personnel. And then I think to answer Mike's question down the end, the next chart, chart 8, is we're looking at it at the whole levy of 11.5 million. And again, it's just, this is what it would be if the county took over the town levies, paying 21 cents for Greene EMS, 43 cents for the counties for picking up the town levy, 4 cents for us picking up the unexpended fund balance, and 38 cents. And then you flip it over one more time, and chart 9, you get to the magic number of those single family residences. And this is what Sean was saying as far as the disparity across a town and what there are. You have a chart from last month that shows you what the average single family home is in each town. This is just a pure computation of that. Again, orange money is the county, the tax. It's the tax on that single family home using the town tax rate. And the blue is if the county were to assume. It's the same 4 pots of money: Greene EMS, town levy, unexpended fund balance, new personnel. So you can see orange over blue. Some go up, some go down, some go up drastically, some go down drastically. Some very minor.
That's the dichotomy right there. When I say that my budget goes up $1, the town goes down $1, it doesn't quite, as you can see by that last page, it doesn't work that way. There are gonna be some towns that in theory are gonna spend more money. I should say they're gonna spend more money. The county is gonna raise more money on that town than the town currently raises today, just because of the transfer of that expense to the county and then dividing it across the 14 towns. It's very confusing. We debated how to present this for, I don't know, hours, because it doesn't make sense. If your budget goes up $1, then my budget goes up $1. But how the apportionment math works, it just doesn't work that way. And the top line there is the one that's most confusing. When it shows a theoretical reduction for the county to take it over. And that's just all it goofy math. But that's how the system works in terms of how the apportionment or the amount of money that each individual town. So right now, my $27 million levy is divided across 14 different towns. 14 different assessed valuations and 14 different equalization rates that then get computed to bring things up to market rate for full value. And the math works from there. So that's, we could run 100 scenarios of how this could fall out. And if you want me to do that, when we have another meeting next month, we'll do that again, but the assumption here is consolidated system. It includes an expanded personnel base is the goal. The goal is to increase so that we don't have these days of every rig being out, people waiting. And it assumes that expanded payroll, that there was raises involved with those personnel. And again, as a footnote, what I think is probably a little bit of a rounding error is the value of the assets that we have today, particularly the rigs. What is their useful life? I believe there's 22. You say last time there was 22 rigs in service today, plus the Marks, Tahoes. So what is the lifespan of those rigs? Are they still good for 5 years? Is one good for 3 years? Is one dead now? It should be mothballed. But I don't think at the end of the day, that asset valuation is gonna flip these numbers too significantly. Because there is money in multiple budgets for replacements, that we've absorbed. So in fact, I have the money to make some vehicle changeovers or reconditioning or whatever. So that's kind of where we are. I have to apologize. I know that's very complicated. You probably just had more discussion on municipal finance than you ever want to have in your life.
They all can do tax, they can all do your tax rate calculations now, though.
Right.
Per thousand.
So I guess that's, we could do math differently. We could think in different scenarios. You know, the status or the decision at what happens to the existing monies that the towns raise on their individual budgets. We've had a brief discussion about that, I think 2 sessions ago. And I think the consensus was is that you would, that's $100 in your budget, you're gonna eliminate that from your budget. And that's the assumption that I made in these counts. So if you're gonna transfer some of that money to another department in your budget, my numbers can change because that dollar for dollar change does not occur. I have glazed eyes. Aiden.
Evening, Sean. Just a quick question, 2 quick questions. On the master spreadsheet that we're looking at, you have to make assumptions for the whole transport income and the benefits of personnel that are blank, and you would do money in that, or they were left blank. So I'll give you an example. After the transporting agency, Durham, Greenville, and Caro, but there's no transport income affiliated with that. So it's left blank.
Okay.
You want to explain?
I think that one fell under other. We tried to categorize it when we looked at the budget as exactly what the average Joe could see right on paper. So there were some items we might miss if they weren't quoted.
I may have mislabeled it, but we think we got it all.
If we could
Yeah.
clearly identify it as transport income, it was identified within the municipal budget as that, it went in as transport income. If there was income that we could not identify, but it was attributable to EMS services, it went into the other bucket. So that's why we're saying the 3.5 million in basically transport income. I mean, where else would you be getting income from other than your tax levy?
Right.
That would be, yeah.
That comes down to, some towns use a different numeration in their chart of accounts. But we tried to be as consistent when we could, but we believe at the end, we've captured both sides of the ledger on where we're spending our money and where the money's coming in from. That's why we're pretty confident that the operation today, without making any changes, is $11 million. Spend that.
And just the second question, the raises that you mentioned, is that both the numeric amount and the fringe benefit?
Yes. Yes,
as a county.
correct.
So really simple, half of the towns will go up and half of the towns will go down.
I think, I'm not sure if it's 8-6 or if it's 7-7,
Oh, it's like 77. Okay.
which, you know, is the same thing on my county budget that we go through every year. We have that same dilemma of some going up, some going down, and that's because of the equalization change, assessment changes. That's the apportionment equation that I knew I was gonna have to wrestle with here for people to understand at the end of the day. So we, you know, when you raise $27 million, then you have to divide it by 14 different ways. Seems a little.
Like going through it, they're not all the same, so it's gonna be 14 different ways, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, I can't change that math. Now, even if I had a special district, everybody's assessed valuation is gonna be different, so I was just hoping for the, with a special district, the ease of documentation and the ease of reading the impact on your tax bill would be very clear. Be one specific source, one specific role, EMS service. Wouldn't have lowered the budget, it wouldn't have had that type of an impact. The county budget for the money that we spent today, one line would have gone down, just like yours would, the other line would have gone up. But it's still gonna come down to the average taxpayer.
I don't know if anybody saw this week, I think I saw Schenectady County and Rensselaer County, both with very similar problems, with transports. They both contracted, one with ambulance. I think the other one was Mohawk, to establish an additional ambulance, to help augment their system. I know that's an option that this group looked at, in the very beginning and opted against it. Just thought it was a good point to see this week, that we're kind of all handling this a lot differently, just depending on where we are. And I don't believe that this, EMS is an essential service belongs in the state budget. I think it belongs as legislation. So I'm guarded, but hopeful that maybe that will continue in the legislative discussions, to make EMS as a essential service that's required. Because I think that might help us out a little bit as well. We can get it there. Not that we haven't tried for 6 years.
Go ahead.
You also take a look, Dutchess County's going through the same thing, but they just pitched a different plan with, instead of doing it with everybody getting on board. They actually can't come up with the idea of doing 2 to 3 ambulances to start out with as a backup.
I'm sorry, repeat that last sentence again?
Dutchess County's going through the same situation. And they have the same concept going on, but they're looking at backfilling with 2 to 3 ambulances just to get the whole program started instead of going with 14 all in one shot, which could be a shock to everybody.
Yeah, I think the uniqueness of what this group has designed is more on the developmental end, where we're actually looking at trying to develop that training plan, that way forward, for an occupation, for people to improve themselves. I'm not sure I've seen it come out anywhere else. And I think it's a good idea.
You do it, you still gotta pay for it, so it comes out of the same.
Yeah.
What?
Well, the concept of easing this in, to perhaps lessen the tax impact on any given year, does that run contrary to the initial goal of having enough rigs in the system to handle the situation? If part of our dilemma here is that how often is every rig out? How often does Greenport come over or Ravenna come down? so that, I wanna make sure everybody understands that, you know, we have a 7 or 8 rig system on, I'm sorry, we have a 10 system on paper today, but we don't staff and run those cars every day. This proposal is designed to be, as I mentioned last time, to be a 7-3-5 system, which then over maybe 24 months could be amended because do you need, does 7-3-5 become 8-4-2 or some other number? Because once we get into the systems analysis of how calls, are they seasonal? How best to efficiently staff? And even the hours of operation, are shifts 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours? I didn't get into that level. What I got into was, I need so many hours a year. How you divide the, you know, there's a pizza 8 slices, there's the pizza 12 slices, it doesn't make a difference. Go ahead.
The current system is effectively the 7-3-5 system that you're describing.
On paper,
In reality, if. Or as the cruise on, there's a 7-3-5 system.
well, I think you answered, yeah,
You hit the if, didn't you?
if everybody's staffing, I mean,
Right, but that's probably 6 out of 7 days a week is a 7-3-5 system.
well, I would beg to differ on that, according to my dispatch operations. We had a call today in my building in Catskill, in another town, and answer the phone.
Well, that happens every day in every town. But effectively, probably 5 or 6 days out of 7, we have a 7-3-5 system on in the county right now as a.
Yes, sir.
Just for a little bit of clarification, when you reference Greenport and Ravenna coming in, are you referring to us coming in as like a mutual aid asset?
Yes, either you're moving your rig closer to the bridge in case you had to get called in, or moving it down.
So in Ravenna is the town of Baltimore. We are not a mutual aid asset, correct? That is our jurisdiction. That's the district.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, this is, I'm a little bit frustrated because I tried to express that some of the information that was being put out there on our behalf, I haven't been contacted, right? So I'm just a little bit concerned at how we're referencing is how our agency is participating in this. Because that, in my mind, I feel like that's a truck that should be included in these numbers that you guys are referencing. So that's why I want to make sure you're not referencing us as an, you know, mutual aid asset. We are a primary asset in this county.
So noted. So noted.
Yeah, your call volume is included. May not be your asset itself.
So the numbers that were referenced in the beginning, and unfortunately I have to make the last 2 meetings, but as I kind of brought up is, I was kind of reference to the consultants. Those numbers weren't jiving, right? My numbers do not jive with what your numbers represent, and it's very minuscule in the grand system. But these are the things that are very concerning to me because that's my area, right? So when you're saying that we're only responding to the town of Baltimore 70 times, I can tell you, I can assure you that both Baltimore Fire and ourselves are responding much more than 70 in the animal. So I just want to make sure that we're using the right information and, you know, you got to make sure that we're including our truck into the system. It is our primary jurisdiction.
No slight was intended. This is not perfect. I can't think of another way for me to cost this out, that's all.
Like, that answers some of the questions on the cost side. Some, there's a lot there. You know, and that's the other point that I'd like to make here to this group with that fiction that was out, you know. The legislature hasn't brought this up. Other than the funding for the studies. We haven't discussed this as a group.
Well, then why haven't you publicly commented numerous times that it doesn't matter what the town and village say that the legislators gonna do this? You've been an article paper with that reference.
from me.
Yep.
I mean, I said that here, that this was gonna wind up boiling down to our decision. It's the legislature that's being asked to fund this, to run this. Who else would make that call?
Well, it should be this group as a collective, not just the legislative
But
body.
it's not this group that approves the tax levy. That's what I mean by it's the legislature that's gonna make the call. It's the legislature that's gonna have to approve the budget in order for this to become a consolidated system. If the recommendation from this group is let's leave things the way they are, we all saved a bunch of time.
But that's not what you're quoted as saying.
That's what I said.
They do what you hear and not what you say.
And this is very true. I mean, that's just where it boils down, you know, this winds up being a legislative decision because it winds up being on the county budget. That's where the decision's made.
Financial impact is the county, but the decision, I still think it's a community decision.
It's this group that's gonna say, where do you want us to go?
The community has to understand the totality of this. And depending upon what the decision is, a mutual decision. I think we're gonna have to take a roadshow here and have a couple of public presentations. So that community members can understand what, you know, either what the current situation is. What the industry is facing, because this is not a Greene County isolated issue, this is happening everywhere. And I think it's very confusing, you know, the data that I just went through tonight is very confusing, it's very difficult to understand. And I worry that as I try, and whatever the decision is, this decision, this layout, some other hybrid, the community still has to get that information and able to digest it. And that's why I'm trying to break it down with simplicity, you know, kind of the KISS principle. As easy as I can, but also understanding that the averaging of impact is very cautionary because of the difference that could occur across 14 towns.
John, while we're on that, can we also just make a reference here too, because whether it's the newspaper, social media or whatever, to minimize the fear factor out there in the public. We're all here having constructive dialogue going back and forth to come up with some sort of system. It's been noted in multiple sources that we're constantly out of units. I think in the paper, that is being fearful of the citizens. We're not to the point. We have fractures in the system. We are not broken currently. We are not to the point yet, and knock on wood, hopefully this doesn't happen. We're not to the point where we are out of units. There's days where we may be thin on coverage because we're moving stuff around. But we just don't need the public thinking, oh my God, I'm not gonna get an ambulance. Because we're not there yet.
No, it's
And I
exactly what
think
we're
this is a
trying,
good
we're trying to
route to
avoid
keep it
that.
from getting there. But I think that's another thing that kind of hits the social media and out in the media that,
But even in Fulton County, we had it happen. We watched it happen.
right, there are other counties.
So
that
what
are
happened?
definitely-
What happened with that? Right? Day one, boom,
Mhm.
sorry, we can't do this anymore. We're done. What do we do
Exactly.
in that event, if it happens? That I think is where we're at here in trying to avoid that. But I think more importantly, that if it should happen, that we have a plan that we can say, okay, we're good. Here's what we're gonna do. I just don't know how you would plan it any better. But yeah, I think that we're trying to avoid exactly that.
To follow up on Sean's point, that is a legitimate concern, the way it is portrayed in the paper. If the system is broken, and I dare you to find a system in any of the surrounding counties that is as good as ours. So, and even in these meetings, it's been portrayed and said multiple times, the BLS system is broken, is beyond, it's treated as beyond repair, not it. The system works pretty well and may need some bolstering. But by and large better than I would say every single surrounding county in the very least, if not further out than that.
I don't disagree, but I will say that, how many budgets have you signed off on?
Does that matter? I.
Well, that's where-
I intimately know the system because I work in it 72 hours a week.
But somebody has to pay for the system.
I understand that someone has to pay for the system,
Well, but that's what I'm saying.
But you're treating the system itself, not counting the money aspect of it. You're saying that the system itself is not functional, is broken. That's not true. The money side is not my thing. But
But it is.
Well, you're describing the actual operational side of it as broken, when it's not the case. No, but it's being described as already there. That's how it's been portrayed, this is every. No, I this, it has been portrayed on set.
Obviously not.
Broke.
Absolutely not. That says the system is dangerous. It is not broken.
It said the BLS system is broken and the ALS system is not, then what's said?
I got a great idea. Why don't we hire Uber for all the beat all that stuff?
Department of Health might have something to say about that.
That's kind of a
Although,
Well, because this whole system works when we work together. Yeah, I agree with some of what was said here today. BLS system has worked for a long time. It's on its own. There are some gaps, but at the same time, we haven't addressed the gaps as far as staffing the way we did with ALS. With ALS, it started with one car, and to two, and three, and four, and five. Now there's five and administrator or chief operations. We haven't done that. I do, one of my concerns is that I have people that live in my town that are picking up kind of what Sean said, that they're getting the impression that all the ambulances are gone and they're not gonna get it. Just to go back, this is about maybe 2 months ago, what happened, and this doesn't come up in the numbers because it's not something that happens all the time. We had a Monday when basically 2 from Hunter, 2 from Wyndham, and 3 from Ashland on the road. Everything but one of ours down the mountain. So the system is working. I know besides us, other agencies do the same thing. And this isn't as a diss to where we're trying to go here, but I'm just saying, I have to agree with the idea that's coming out of the paper that BLS is broken and ALS isn't. I think there's plenty of problems to go around. And I agree with Sean, that's something we gotta be really careful of getting help, because I think we're kind of scaring off.
Pat, do you mind if I ask a question?
yeah, sure. Just remember, it's his job to sell papers.
Yeah,
Well, I know him well.
this started a year and a half ago, basically, when the town supervisors from the mountaintop came to the legislature with an appeal, with a plea almost. What were you envisioning? What were you, when you said to the county, help us, essentially, if I can use those words? Did you picture this kind of thing, or did you say, we're gonna talk for a year and just say, oh, well, let the towns decide again and let it fall by the wayside? What were you envisioning?
I think very much like this, right? I think with some minor differences, but I think forward momentum. And, actually, this is more than what I had hoped for. You know, our supervisors discussed this pretty rigorously before that day. There were some red flags in what was going on in the county. And also there were some issues that were happening in some of our systems and some issues happening in other systems, not on the mountaintop, that, we were aware of. And our goal was really to get ahead of it. To get ahead of what we perceived as future issues. You know, I'm very happy to say that we're all in pretty good shape on the mountaintop right now. But this is still a worthy endeavor and a worthy discussion and good work that we're doing. I don't know if that answers your question. But, you know, I thank the county, I thank Pat and Sean and everybody, Ray, for doing all of the work, for all of us because it's hard. It's hard work. I mean, clearly it's in detail. And, it's giving us good data, all of us, to, assess which way we want to go.
That trying to assess no blame or anything. That message that you sent to the legislature was foreboding. It was, there's trouble ahead and we better cut it off. People saying the system's not broken or not dead or whatever, but those 6 towns were in unison saying, we have to do something now, or there's gonna be problems ahead. So that's kind of the gist of what I get. Am I accurate?
100%.
Okay.
100%. I mean, listen, and I think, you know, today Hunter had to go down to the valley for valley coverage. There's other days where Catskill has to come up to Hunter. It's days like that where you see the cracks in the system and you worry, you know, do we got enough gas in the tank? I think, this is great data. But we have no idea, I have no idea what's gonna happen in any other town, which is gonna potentially very much upset the overall apple cart. All I see is what I see, and I talk to these guys fairly often, and, I understand what we're going through on the mountaintop. And I hear the calls.
I think the biggest thing is planning for a sustainable system. I mean, yeah, we got the fractures, but at any given moment, you lose 4 or 5 EMS providers within the county. That could turn into a partial collapse. So I think we need to plan for the sustainability would be the overall goal.
The whole idea,
Thank
Mike,
you.
is to be proactive instead of reactive. And seeing in the future what possibly could happen. Just trying to stay ahead of the curve, that's all.
Thank you.
And I think that the group here as a whole has done a great job in being, somebody who was a prior supervisor and had to deal with every supervisor in this room deals with. I could have been happier with the results of what's going on so far. I think it's fantastic.
Look at it this way. It wasn't that many years ago, everybody was volunteer service. That wasn't working, so it kind of evolved. It's gotten to the point now where it has to evolve further than what it is. Because everything is fractured all over the whole county. With different people running it, different people calling shots, things like that. And it's gotten to the point where you just can't do it anymore. You're gonna have to get something that's more consolidated, a little more comprehensive, and basically more responsive and accountable.
Can I, just switch gears a little bit? And, maybe not talk about the numbers so much, and basically, you know, when our first meeting, we talked about some of the things that we could do when, you know, to get the ball rolling. And to sort of get further along in at least having a picture of what the system could look like. And what I'm talking about is really like getting every EMS unit on the CAD system for one. Looking at buying power, looking at the collective agreements that we have. And, you know, this has sort of nothing to do with the work that you guys are doing. But, yeah, but what I would like to sort of reinforce is that we continue doing that. I don't know, I'm speaking to someone out there, I don't know who that person is, but, or who those people are, but, I think that data would be super helpful. And I also think it would be super helpful for Greene County Dispatch. If we were able to do that, we all sort of agreed at that time that this was a good idea, and I don't think anything has happened.
Here's, the only thing I remember that was a concern there was getting the not-for-profits involved with that type of stuff as well. Because they're not authorized for some of the tax things that the municipalities would be.
But I think, you know,
I think, was it George June was gonna take a look at that?
I don't remember, but I also know it's not just the not-for-profits, there's a couple of other agencies, my understanding, that are not on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But to get them out, who pays for it?
Wait a minute. Greene EMS has to run a CAD or not for profit, why couldn't Greene or?
No, I didn't mean the CAD. I was talking like on the purchasing side of things.
Okay. I think it's just like, part of it is also having the appearance that we're one system, even if we're separate bodies right now. Like that we're working together and that we're all pulling the same wagon.
Why would someone not be on CAD?
I don't know. We're on.
I don't know, the only ones that are is Greene EMS, Wyndham Ambulance, Ashland Ambulance,
Hunter in.
and Hunter, I believe is in the process.
Not yet.
Okay,
In the process.
in the process.
I know we took some effort to get on and we're on. For all intents and purposes, we're gonna be on. We've made the effort. There's others.
Out of my wheelhouse.
I don't know, and I'm not even asking for someone to respond. All I'm saying is that we should do this.
What's the take?
And the buying side, yeah, you're right, Rich. I mean, like, I don't know where we're all buying relatively the same stuff. And if there could be some sort of a collective purchasing group, I think that alone, right, gets us further along, even if we're separate agencies right now. I think we gotta start making some of these smaller moves to get to the bigger goal. Dude,
I agree, this is probably the second or third time we're talking today, so should we form like a subcommittee amongst ourselves to start that, along with our local county representatives, or?
I don't even know, because it's not something that,
You have an EMS
I am
council
aware
that
of.
meets every month that is basically comprised of the administration of every single ambulance service. They could be having these discussions on a monthly, weekly basis. I don't know what communication goes on between them all.
probably the avenue.
No.
He said it'd be.
No, I mean, as far as administrators talking, not in that meeting.
Something very similar, like, we use by plow, I guess. County out west came up with a spec.
Piggyback on.
I know, Wyndham got one, I'm sure other towns do the same thing, we use that spec, and basically, it saves us quite a bit of money.
There is one, I think it was George June that mentioned it, I just don't recall the name of it. There was a municipal.
Right.
Purchasing, basically a bid. Or.
That was a recommendation, by the way, in the pitch report. Everything you said, Sean.
Good.
So I just want to kind of clarify. It seemed like the end of last meeting, it was kind of, we're gonna go with option 2 or whatever, move forward that. Now we're talking about other options. What, is this a future looking thing, or are we still up, or is this body still aiming to do a full countywide within the next year, 2 years? Because it's like we were talking about at the end of last meeting, we forward the full bid, so to speak. Now we're talking about potentially doing consolidation efforts that are kind of more to supplement the current system.
No, I wouldn't say there's anything there that supplements the current system. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I see things going, that this group is looking to go into a full countywide system.
Because if you went to the full countywide system, then you wouldn't need what he was just talking about.
But he's talking about starting it that now to get some of that data. I don't want to say,
I think it gains efficiencies on the system level, I think it gains efficiencies from a tax levy perspective, if we're all paying less right now.
but that's, again, it's gonna be on the EMS folks to do that through EMS council or whatever other avenue you have, to do that. Just start doing it now.
When this all started,
Yeah, I mean.
the EMS council was never approached. I mean, it's a group of EMS administrators and
Yeah.
employees that meet every single month of this building. And when the issue around, came to the legislator saying we have an EMS problem. No one from the legislator or anyone else came to any EMS administrator meeting and said, hey, what's the issues? Where can we help? What can we do to bolster this? It was just, let's go and pay an outside company and look into it. No one came to ask the people that intricately know this system and work in it every single day what the issues are. So I think a lot of these discussions could have been had, or the money was spent on Fitch, because we had numbers that could have been updated from dispatch from the last time.
I think that's inaccurate. Just plain and simple, I think that's.
Why didn't the council do something?
Yeah, I know, I just think that there was a lot.
What's the job of the council then? What do you do?
I mean, there's our EMS coordinator.
Aren't you supposed to be evaluating the system and coming to us?
We don't.
And I just know that before we even went down there, we talked to a lot of people.
Council technically is in charge of training. That's the council's main and primary mission, is to hold EMT classes and work on training. And do some interoperability between agencies, such as the mutual aid program that does now move in all around the county. That was brought up by Sean, was all discussed at the council meeting. But when there was an issue that came up, no one came and talked to anyone in EMS. I would think that if you have an issue that involves, you go and talk to, let's work with those agencies. Or the heads of those agencies.
Well, that's what happened when Sean came down. He interacts with his people daily. So when the supervisors come together, the supervisors are representing the EMS staff. This is something this is how it all started. They were in contact with them, talking to them.
I met the staff. They had the opportunity to point out to me what was working, what wasn't working.
All the administrators. Yeah, I'm not sure that, it's accurate what you're saying. Because even when Fitch walked in and asked for answers to questions, there was some departments just on their own.
Yeah, some departments wouldn't even put up anything,
So,
they still do.
I guess
Just really quickly, going back to that topic, like I understand the EMS council and everything, but going back to the collective buying and the CAD system, et cetera, but with the collective buying, we had a kind of sidebar conversation. We're kind of thinking of it more as like, the county fuel bid, or some sort of a county collective buying power situation. I don't know that that's the EMS council. I kind of think that is more Greene County Emergency Services.
let me just
I don't know.
clarify this. Mark, where do you buy your fuel?
Yeah.
You get it from so you're able to buy on our county
All the
contract.
towns. Yep.
Come to our pumps.
See, that's what I don't know. I didn't know.
Almost every agency, I believe.
So you're able to.
Some town.
How do you go about doing that, Mark? Do you pass a resolution like what the regular municipality do, that you're gonna accept the county bid or?
We are, they are able to bid purchase through the state bid.
They come to our pumps.
years and years and years ago, we, reached out to the county and whoever is purchasing or whatever said, yes, you're eligible and send us some.
Like when we call a fuel supplier or whatever, we find out what the county bid is, and they have to give you that price.
Right, that's what we do.
Yeah, we just put the option on the bid to have other municipalities on it.
Any municipality can get that bid.
Right, so same scenario,
But
right? Let's
They're not a
say
municipality, but they're servicing it.
some department says, goes to these purveyors. I have to believe this exists in other places, goes to these purveyors of products and that EMS companies need and says, hey, we're a county, we got a lot of buying power here.
Great.
We want
I think it
for a
exists.
rate from you.
The mechanical the terrible word, the mechanicalism of that purchase consortium
Yes.
was easy for the county to undertake because we're buying gas, we're buying stone, we're buying wash stone, we're buying pipe, we're buying.
Yep.
So the ability to have a piggyback was relatively easy and administratively a very light lift.
Yep.
The county doesn't buy medical supplies and medical equipment and stretchers and
I think that's fair.
so
I think it's out there.
how is the centralization of procurement made? If it means, you know, if it's the easy thing to do is I hire or I consult with somebody, but then all those agencies, I gotta know what type of Band-Aid you're buying, what type of this you're buying, what type of, and why do you buy that one and not this one? I don't have the expertise for that.
The municipal,
That sounds familiar.
name ring a bell?
Talk about
Cause I-
Sourcewell.
Sourcewell maybe?
Sourcewell, yeah, Sourcewell.
I think one of those has an EMS contract.
Sourcewell, my Sourcewell, and we use some.
Then we
they got
could
a lot of
probably-
stuff there.
Go
But
on.
I don't know how to standardize that equipment. Because you all have different equipment. Why? Because you're independent agencies.
Certainly, but I'm sure that there's some companies that offer all the equipment, all the options, and maybe we can get that.
The standardization of equipment should be not even step one, it should be step zero.
Yeah.
Who's in charge of that? That's, you know,
Sean,
yeah.
to speak to that. If they wanna go through the county, as their like consortium practice, purchasing power, then you want that benefit, then we would set, this is what advantage you're buying, it's uniform across that standard. Not everybody gets to pick what they want, this is, get that purchasing power, this is what you get. That's what it is, and that'll build and feed into the system that may be implemented. So you don't, not, oh, we want this to be like this, no, this is what the standard's gonna be, and that's how you're gonna be able to get the reviews. Right, so,
Depends on what you're talking about.
Sounds simple.
well, we're talking about Band-Aids,
Yeah, that kind of stuff is the easy stuff.
Sean brought it up.
And there's usually a lot of options in there too. You know, you don't just get one thing, you've got a lot of options that you can have that are under that purveyor's umbrella. So I mean, if you're ordering from them, you get a certain discount on whatever the devil it is you get from them. And we've done with Sourcewell and stuff too. And, there's numerous things that you can get it from. You get supplies and all kinds of things from. And it's one exact thing, it can be a lot of different things, but a standard discount.
But if we're transitioning to this
Right, well,
county system,
right,
then
the county
we
becomes.
get there,
The county's gonna supply everybody the
So
same.
one of the options that was mentioned previously is the towns stay in business. And the county just contributes more money to the system, but individual towns. That's another option. But my understanding was when the mountain tops came to us, recognizing there was a problem. They wanted out of business. They wanted out of business. And if that's not the case, then great, then that's another option to put on the table, isn't it?
No,
Because you have different towns who contract with another town. And they have no leverage to get a better deal. That's, my assumption was we want out. There's no standardization, there's different training levels, there's different this levels, you have different personnel policies. It's a helter-skelter type of system that, okay, does back each other up. The uniformity, where is the uniformity? Yes, sir.
I think this kind of a discussion might be better suited if you wanted to approach the EMS council. Next Tuesday is our meeting, right? At 3 o'clock upstairs. If you wanted, or 3:30, sorry. If you want to meet with us, and then I think this is more of something that could be discussed in a smaller group. I think big picture stuff is kind of where everyone's kind of like, where is this all going forward? So I think we're kind of stuck in the purchasing power discussion that is.
I think that as much as the town said that the county has to be clear what it wants to do, the town's gotta be clear to the county what it wants to accomplish. Otherwise, we're pissing in the wind.
So do all the towns want?
What is it? What do the towns want? Do the towns want to get out of business? If they don't, then let's not talk about a consolidated system. Let's talk about the county supporting the individual systems.
I think that's.
We can be here all night. Somebody make a decision. Towns, make a decision. I can't hear you, Mark.
I think we all know what the problems are. The EMS providers know what the problems are with the system on a day-to-day basis. I think the county legislature and certainly the town supervisors that run ambulances understand the challenge that they have faced and not being able to find people, not being able to get their trained, not being able to staff the way they want to staff. I don't think we need to sit and rehash all the problems. I think we've got them nailed down. I mean, this is the fifth meeting, right? I think we got those nailed down. I don't think it does any good to go back and rehash. This group wasn't discussed with, this person wasn't contacted, et cetera. I don't think it does any good to go back to that. I think we all feel, at least I feel, that some form of a consolidated system is what the county needs. How we get there is the question. Now, I want to commend Kevin and Ray. I've never seen data analysis like this on EMS in the county. Great work. And I think it's important for county legislators to see all this and digest it. I can't agree more with Sean. We're going to start spinning our wheels here if a decision's not made that the county is going to get out of the EMS service. That's the situation. Then the legislators now have a decision to make to spend an additional, I think, $3 or $4 million, to make a consolidated county system. Number one step, hire an EMS director and let that EMS director, whether you do a consolidated system starting next year or the year after, the EMS director make them in charge of that to begin with. Let them set standards that this is what's going to be bought and purchased going forward. And you're going to set a standard on what type of ambulance you're going to have and how many you're going to have in the fleet, and all that good stuff. And then let that person write the plan on how all the towns are going to commit. You know, who's the first town, who's the second town, who's the third town. Have it all plotted out. And I've heard this comment that, you know, what if it fails? I don't buy that. How's it going to fail? The county has a person who's running it and has staff that's appropriately funded and with proper oversight. It's not going to fail. It may take 2 years, it may take a year or two to get to where everybody wants the system to be. But a good plan, we'll get it. And I think we have to for the benefit of the people in the county. We don't have a hospital. Next best thing we can have is a great EMS. Reflected yesterday, we had 2 falls on the mountaintop. Steve, over there.
Lost hiker and a cardiac arrest reversal.
Lost hiker spent the night out in the woods for the rain. I think, hiked in. Hiked in, they started IV antibiotics. The guy who had an open fracture that was like, gave him morphine. State police helicopter came in, hoisted the guy out, flew to a landing spot, transferred him to life net, was flown to Auburn Med. That's a hell of an EMS system. The system isn't broken, but it's stressed. And it's incumbent upon everybody sitting in this room and around this table to make sure that we do something that it does not begin with.
Sean, on that $4 million on the payroll side, or the benefit side, is that the staff, the system at the levels it would need? Or is that still, short?
No, I added, I bumped payroll and the number of bodies. I increased the number of
Now,
bodies.
you know the difference, what's the current number of bodies and what's the number of bodies needed, and see, or how are we ever gonna get to that? We need 30 more personnel, make this system work, how are we gonna get there?
So go back 2 meetings, when I met with staff, he determined that we needed 210,000 hours in a year of service level, but that meant that nobody had a day off. So when you add PTO, we had to bump that number up, and that's when we got to 230 or 240 in terms of the number of hours. Now, you can divide that by PE or PTE. The existing staff that we have, for those who responded to the data, we only had 176,000 hours of existing people to fill that request. So that's why I added not only the dollar amount per hour, but I added more people in, and that's where I got those two numbers from. That added, roughly that. And then I also, and this was a little bit more of an estimate, I added value for what I call the back of the house operations. The people who are not in the field, they're in the office, they're buying the stuff, they're training, they're reviewing, et cetera. So that's where the $4.1 million new value or new increase of expenses came from.
Well, do you have the actual number of people we're looking for? We gotta try to recruit an average of 20 EMTs a year and 10, ALS, paramedics a year on average, and that continually be that for attrition and whatnot as we go forward. How are we gonna do that? I mean, it sounds like 2 years ago, the towns were saying, we just don't have the people to staff this to where we are, comfortable and have that good system. And I go, well, what's changed since then? What are we going to do? Take care of that situation first, and then move towards consolidation, move towards common buying power, and then get there. Because we could do a county system, but the county's still gonna have the same problem with recruitment.
Not necessarily.
And why not?
Because right now, there's no effort whatsoever, and I'm not banging any town here, but there's no effort whatsoever. I mean, what's one town do? They go to the high school for career day. That's great, but there's no coordinated countywide effort. I think if a consolidated system were put in place, you had a plan, you went into the high schools, you went to the, you had a class, maybe having a class.
You could do that tomorrow.
But who's doing it?
You could do that tomorrow. And organize that, whatever.
It doesn't do you any good though, because you're dealing with all different operations.
It's not even that, it's paying for it. Like with the county plan, we decided that we're paying for people to go to paramedic school, go to EMT school, and when they're being paid to go to school, it's a little bit more appealing than having to try to go to paramedic school full time, work, 60 hours a week, find a camp. So that was one incentive that would make the county different. None of us are doing that. And we did it once a month, but nobody's really paying for paramedics to go to school and find us out. We have to go.
We talked about growing our own.
Yeah.
Mark has said in the past that he does not really have a recruitment problem on his operation, either because of his wage scale, benefit scale, or how he recruits from wherever he recruits from. Well, why is he different from 8 other organizations? 8 other that have all different hourly rates, all different benefit rates. There's no consolidation, there's no consistency, there's difference in training.
Like I said 3-4 months ago, why don't you put it out there to see what a consolidated pay rate and see what the traction is brought forward to do.
You absolutely did, and I agree with you.
You put the worm on the hook and you see if anybody bites.
Well,
If nobody bites still, then
You're gonna do it, they'll say, okay, I wanna go, and you're gonna, when are you gonna start paying for me to go to EMT school?
well,
Well, we're just passing the waters out, well, come to me in about 6 months from now.
that could be a lot less expensive than an additional 4 million on the county tax levy on the taxpayer. It could be quite a bit cheaper, go that route right now. And then as we move forward, right now, do it.
I didn't think we were looking for cheap, I thought we were looking to improve our service for our constituents.
Okay, so you're supposed to just go one way, not the other.
All right, you guys have got the elephant in the room with that, but you know what the next one's gonna be? We need a county hospital. That's gonna be the next one. That's gonna be the next one, county hospital.
Not a chance.
We're not going on.
But I'm saying, that's gonna come up, that's gonna come up.
Well, you guys are all here because you say you're going bankrupt. From it. It costs costs too much for your EMS system at the town level.
You're taking everything right now, you're taking it to hospitals that have their shut down, you go from this hospital to that hospital, oh, that one's closed, oh, we gotta go to this one, that's a bunch of crap.
I think that has nothing to do with this being a topic, but that is so off topic.
That's a whole different issue.
That's
That's
the next
for
thing.
now.
Good.
As one, sorry, as one of 14 legislators, I would be more than happy to see about county taxes and a vote towards county taxes being spent. See if you can get more people, get that payroll situation here. And then move towards consolidation or efficiencies to gain. As you continually improve the system, otherwise, it's not gonna work even at the county level.
I think if you consolidate everything, Mike, and we have exactly what we have now.
Yeah.
No more. Under one command, I think it works better.
Day one, it doesn't change.
Yeah,
You know,
everything else is all over the
even
place.
if we can't build it, I think it's a stronger system under one band.
Absolutely.
Than it is spread out under all of
Have to have something to offer,
But that's
keep
not
track.
gonna happen. There's no way this is going to happen January first, 2026.
We're gonna-
I think that's a, I think we have to start doing things now in the interim before we can get to that full point, if that's what we decide we're going to do. I do think there are things, and Mike and I both agree with that, with that one meeting with the legislature, that I think the legislature, the county should throw the town money for, so everybody can be at the pay scale and just for the interim before we are able to do whatever we're going to be doing in 2020.
And there are other things that these folks can be doing in the meantime.
Right,
Tell them, what do you need? That's on your back. The legislature is supporting everybody in here and wants this. But you all know the business. I don't know the business. You guys have to step up and start, do the consolidation just on the buying power. There's a lot of things that need to get done before, even if it never happens. You need to at least start doing that someplace.
And I brought up to the college when they came and spoke to us this past week. And they said they could put something together fairly quickly on getting some certificate programs in place.
Yeah, and they don't need SUNY approval for certificate
So
programs.
that's another step to start growing our own, is
Yep.
working with our college.
And obviously what Mark said too is we gotta, you gotta get the schools, the high schools, the 10th, 11th graders, their career days, but we gotta stay on the guidance counselor every day. Hey, this is a viable career path because it may be paying this with this and with this.
I respect what you're all saying, steps. But those steps are not really gonna get the system any. It's unfortunate this for any device in the world. And as far as like staffing. If you go into a high school coordinated plan and you say, there's 3 or 4 in each school. When we graduate, come out, we're going to K, we're going to 3 class. We're gonna guarantee you a job. You're gonna get those kids. And you're gonna get them at 18, and you're gonna run them through, and in 3 months, you're gonna have them out working as EMTs on your county ambulance. That's that's how you're gonna grow your system. Second way is that you're gonna pay better. So unfortunately, I'm gonna turn around and take people away from Greenport and try and put it out of business, with all respect. But, and that's 2. 3 is the Greene EMS formula, I think is, we provide the best vehicles, the best equipment, and we stay for the highest level of care. And that is what attract people to come and work here at the paramedical. So I can see a real plan here, but I just don't want to see us take these small steps and everybody expect there to be improvement. That's not where it needs to be. It needs to be full commitment. And you've got to have somebody on the county level coordinating it. And again, whether something significant happens in 2026 or, I'm sorry, 2020,
6, yes, and then it's planned for 2027. I don't know. That's up to you folks as far as budgetary. But
In the back,
I think in order to have a direction of what the next meeting may hold is, I think you need to, I think Roden said it 15 minutes ago. What do the town want? You have a handful of town supervisors. Do they have interest in a full system? I know some, I'm sure some do, but I mean, if they all have interest, then move forward with that. Some of them are hesitant or want a different idea. For a year, we asked for it.
it was the group of 6 mountaintop supervisors that came to us.
But you have other towns where they ask, you said, well, you need to know what the town wants, the town wants. Ask. That's good, we understand that there's an issue, we're here to help address that issue. But at the same time, we're not begging to get out of the. We're not for.
BJ?
Oh, it's been the first couple meetings, it's the first time I've been in public. Do any of these numbers incorporate the villages that are still left in this county?
I mean,
The villages aren't in business.
Or
no,
what?
The villages aren't in the ambulatory business.
I was just looking at the overall tax, the tax base, what I didn't know, this would be it.
No. I refer people in your book, go back to last month's agenda. Item number 4, the option was towns stay in business, county contributes more money to towns. With the understanding that there will be MOUs for payroll parity, training consistency, fleet standardization, equipment standardization, and no job hopping, which means someone's not working 90 hours a week. There's an option right there. Does that lead to transition in the long haul then to a centralized system? Maybe. But again, I was hearing, we went out of business. If I picked up that vibe wrong, then dump that option. I'm okay with that. My job is to provide options. All right, we're down to some short strokes here. There was still a goal of allowing staff to speak to any county legislator, provide any questions or feedback. If you still want to do that, we have rooms upstairs. Or if we're done with the discussion, the town reps could take a break and head home. Staff could stay behind and speak to county legislators or not. That was a request made at the last meeting. I'll provide the time frame. Unless anyone has any other questions, then lastly, what I would ask is, we have another meeting scheduled. It doesn't mean we can't have more than one more meeting scheduled. What do you want to come back in June?
well, I do think it's a good idea to get to EMS council. Somebody from your office attend that if needed. To say,
Need an ambulance.
to get an idea as to how this group purchasing agreement might go. And what we would need at the legislature to approve that, if anything.
From that, I think we as a legislative body should seriously entertain in our next meetings about allocating or directing Sean to allocate some funds towards scholarships and things like that. And putting that forward right away, because one way or the other, it's gonna happen if the county decides to be a county ambulance system, one way or the other, that's gonna happen.
They do a scholarship for the EMT class in the county.
For more. Mike, we've provided $15,000 last couple of years to the council to get people the EMT certificate.
Do we have numbers on how that's helped?
But up to 15,000 for scholarship. To use a handful of times when we have not used the full 15 any of the years long. Because we haven't had the people that qualified for the scholarship, that the county residents that wanted to work in the county after they graduated. And
That's right. We did with stipulations.
So far.
And that's on the EMT training or?
EMT.
We don't offer anything for paramedics, we don't do our own
Yeah,
paramedics.
we put the stipulations on there because I didn't want to get somebody certified and have them move to Carolina.
We're open.
So,
Mr.
Chairman. I'll say it again. We're in the same spot we were 10 years ago. Me, you were on that committee, Nate. We're here again. This is drugs and trade-off.
So let me ask you this.
No, back and forth.
Would it make a difference to anybody on the legislature? Should we look at passing our own resolution?
Can't hear you, Pat.
We take a look as a legislature at our own resolution to make EMS an essential service in Greene County.
I'm sorry, Pat, I missed that last part of it.
Should we be looking at, as a legislature, doing our own resolution, because the state has now turned this down multiple years? Should we be looking at our own resolution to declare EMS as an essential service in Greene County? Whereas
Send a letter to the state.
Absolutely.
we sent multiple letters.
Sent letters.
I'm talking about for us to establish that as our own resolution, that we in Greene County are gonna require EMS service to be provided. Right now, it is not required. So there's another step that we can make, and I think that makes a big statement if we can get that passed to the state. That, listen, we've asked you guys multiple times to do this, to help out with things. They've refused to do it every time. I think that's a big step, and a big statement. That we can do. So I'll work on a resolution for that. I think talking with EMS council, getting that mass purchase agreement together, and establishing that, I think it's not that far out of the realm. I think it's an easy thing to accomplish, so.
Can we grab a room as supervisors for the mountaintop of our colleagues in the valley tonight upstairs?
2 rooms upstairs open.
Rick, meet us upstairs. Mike, you meet us upstairs. Go on, please.
John, those 2 training rooms are unlocked. The training room upstairs is open.
Thank you.
No. Supervisors are leaving, so staff can stay if you wish to stay, and
All right, we're gonna cut the feed. Turn off the recorder.
I'm leaving.